Welcome back to episode 2 of the Strengths in the Mirror podcast. I'm Simon Matthews, one of the directors of the Global Positive Health Institute, here with the GPHI founder and leader, Liana Lianov. Always a great pleasure to speak with Liana and speak about her ideas and her wisdom about positive psychology and lifestyle medicine. If you haven't yet listened to episode 1, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to that before you listen to this one. Today, we're going to be focused on the first of 5 toolkits, and we'll dig into that shortly. But if you haven't yet listened to that first episode, that's an introduction to the book, an introduction to what led Liana to write it, the principles that are embedded in it, and it'll form a really valuable foundation for understanding the rest of this podcast series. So thanks, Liana, for being here today, and we're going to dig into the first of these toolkits today and understand it a little more. So this is a toolkit focused on self-care. And I wonder if we could start by you giving us maybe a high-level overview of this and also the component parts of it.
Yes. Most people are probably familiar with the elements of what they might consider important to one's self-care. So a lot of this may be common sense, but it's good for review. And we'll also dive in a little bit about how they interrelate. And so when we're talking about self-care here, we are talking about healthy lifestyles. And we're talking about things like being physically active, eating a predominantly plant-based diet, getting enough high-quality sleep, avoiding risky substance use, and managing our stress. And these are so fundamental not only to our physical health, but they're fundamental to all other aspects of health, emotional health, mental health. And as we'll talk about in future podcasts, they all interrelate and reinforce each other. And what I find just very enlightening is that perhaps what may motivate one individual to make some of those habit changes, because self-care is about habit changes, may be an endpoint that's a little different than when we normally think about, I want my body to be healthy, I want to live long enough. It might be an endpoint that emotionally they want to be more boosted, or maybe they're struggling a little bit with some mental health issues, and we know that these self-care habits, these physical habits, actually can be not only a supplement, but sometimes a direct treatment for certain kinds of mental illness challenges like depression. So this is a very exciting and vital part of the toolkit is self-care and these physical habits.
Liana, there are 2 things on my mind as I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'd love to ask you both of them if I may. The first is the idea that you're talking about of self-care stands in contrast perhaps to the idea of self-care that we might get from doing vox pops with someone in the street, and if we ask someone what self-care means, we might hear ideas like taking a bath, or going for a walk, or something like that, and those are valuable activities, of course, and they're lovely things to do. But really, what I'm hearing in this is that the self-care that you're focused on here is what I might call eudaimonic self-care. It's the self-care that digs into our deeper, more purposeful, more meaning-making selves, rather than hedonic self-care, taking a bath, eating a chocolate ice cream, whatever it may be, which can bring us great pleasure in that moment, but doesn't necessarily have any lasting impact.
Exactly. So what we're talking about are habits that science is overflowing with the evidence that these do have lasting impact on all elements of our health and well-being, so much so that they can treat many of the chronic diseases, in fact, even reverse them and lead us to a healthier, longer life. And it's, of course, what the field of lifestyle medicine is all about, and it's founded upon. And more and more health practitioners and physicians are looking at that science and saying, whoa, this is actually not only a tool for self-care, we all should be doing it, physicians and patients alike, but that the healthcare system should really be prescribing these as a primary form of treatment. And so we're in this series, we're not talking from the perspective of health providers, but follow us at the Global Positive Health Institute, because a lot of what we do is for the perspective of healthcare practitioners. The Strengths in the Mirror book is for a broader audience. And so everything that lifestyle medicine can be offers in that healthcare setting as treatment, and so not only prevention, but treatment for those kinds of common chronic diseases, lifestyle-related diseases, are things that we can, to bring it back to, do in our self-care by ourselves. We can be proactive, and even without seeing a health professional, without being told to do it, we can do it. Of course, the devil's in the details about our self-motivation, our nudges, our habit building. And of course, there's that whole science of behavior change that's relevant to this as well. It's not so easy as to say, okay, everyone's heard it now. Those are it, the self-care things. Now, end of podcast, go off and do it. We know it's not as easy as that. Yeah. And that's where some of the other tools that we'll be talking about later in the series are also important. The positive activities that build positive emotions that can support us, even character strengths, other tools that can support us in nudging ourselves forward to do some of these self-care habits that sometimes can be challenging to do.
People who may have some familiarity with managing a chronic condition like asthma will be familiar with the idea that there are often two medications used. One is used to minimise the likelihood that an asthma attack will even occur, and the second is used in the event that it does occur to minimise the severity of the symptoms and signs. And it appears to me that the toolkit can serve both those functions also. It can be employed in a way that both prevents a decline in well-being, but it can also be used as a recovery tool.
Yes, exactly. And often, traditionally, people hear about healthy eating, being physically active, and they generally more traditionally think, oh yeah, that's preventing disease. And so we're saying that's very important, and that's more important than treating disease. But so many people, especially later in life, who may have not had a good kickstart of these self-care habits, may already have some things going on in their bodies. And so it's a hopeful message that, yes, it rolled in with all that prevention, which should have started, in the womb, even primordially. It's never too late to really make the best of the self-care, to reverse whatever's going on in our bodies that can lead to outright disease. And even those who have outright disease can reverse some of those processes. And that's what's just so exciting. And so that message is, again, a message that is often not talked about in the broader community and society, but the lifestyle medicine leaders are putting that message front and center. And so again, in Strengths in the Mirror, that's why it was so important that we start with, and I felt it was in the book to start with this as the first tool set in the toolkit. It is so foundational. And also, again, one that people are most familiar with and associate with health and well-being.
Share with us a little about how this particular toolkit intersects with the others, and perhaps in answering that also, why we need more than this, why we need more than simply self-care strategies to do well.
Yes, well, thanks for that question. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier, and I'll dive in, that many of us know what these health habits, self-care habits are, but many of us also find it challenging, depending on what bumps in the road we find. We're busy at work, we go on vacation, other things happen, and we fall off the wagon, so to speak. Or maybe there are things that we just never quite mustered the motivation, the capacity to do and oftentimes, for example, a 100% whole food plant-based diet is an example of something that maybe feel way out of reach for some folks. And so whatever those self-care habits are that one is interested in doing, perhaps a place to start is to make sure we come from a place of energy, a personal energy. That personal energy and driver towards those healthy behaviors comes from positive emotions. And so if we can build positive experiences and emotions as we start to build those habits, and they feel good and they're fun, we're just going to be more naturally inclined to do them again and again in an upward spiral. And sometimes even separate from all that, if all of that seems overwhelming, perhaps letting go of that, like, oh, I'm going to eat well, I'm going to be active, and just say, okay, sort of let me just look inward. What's just gonna really just help me in a more simpler way to be content, to have a few moments of joy, and just start there and not think beyond that. And that's where the tool of positive activities in the toolkit is very important. But then related to that, another, to answer your question, the other toolkits, a separate one is the social connections and social resources. So our relationships, those around us, and what habits they have and how they nudge us, how they are role models for us, how they keep us accountable, how they make it more fun to do healthy cooking together or to do a beautiful walk in the woods together. It reinforces the self-care habits. And as we'll see, those kinds of relationships, of course, have monumental impacts on our overall health and well-being independently. And then last but not least, besides the kinds of activities we do in terms of these physical habits, these positive activities habits, these social connections, is what we innately use or that bring to the table our character strengths and our brain strengths, that again, if we use them, know what our strengths are, and we intentionally use them to help nudge us towards these former habits, those first three habits, then they're really reinforcing in a very powerful way. So ideally, it would be good to, on a regular basis, to make use of the entire toolkit and all 5 of these. But again, that may be too much to do all at once. And what's great is that we can actually start anywhere. And whatever attracts you as a listener, start there, because the best habits or the best things are the things that we actually do. So after you listen to this podcast, if there's something that sticks with you, go with that. But over time, the aim would be to do all of them because of these reinforcing intricate links that they all have, which have a much more powerful effect and lead to what I've been calling positive health. And that's what the Global Positive Health Institute is all about. So it's this state of well-being over and above what we can achieve with those traditional risk factors. And the traditional risk factors are what we're talking about now, part 1, the tool set, being active, eating healthy. But if we do all of the items and tools in the toolkit, then we're moving towards that state of positive health. And that keeps us not only to be more resilient, but also really actually allows us to, if we're facing with trauma or difficult times, it allows us to not bend as much. We are just overall stronger in the face of everything that life throws at us. And that is what strengths in the mirror are all about. We look in the mirror, those things make us stronger.
So there's an important message there, Liana, for any perfectionists who might lurk among us, and that is that you don't need to start by doing all of it perfectly all at once. You can start somewhere, anywhere. I love that idea that you invoked earlier. The idea that 10% of something is better than 100% of nothing. Start where you're at. Do something. The individual activity will confer a benefit, and when you manage to bring them all together, almost like a symphony concert, then they produce something that's way more magnificent than we could imagine.
Yeah, exactly. And I have this concrete visual of a kit with all these tools in it. And of course, I call them tool sets. So there are 5 tool sets because within there are many other tools. And we may be rummaging around in there and something looks shiny and interesting based on these conversations or something we've read or heard about elsewhere. It's like, oh, this tool looks interesting. Let me just put that out there. Let me work with this one tool. And boy, that worked. Or maybe it wasn't quite right for me. I'll put it back or put it aside. Let's see what else there is. But over time, we can start pulling out these tools, lay them all out, and start to really have almost like in the operating room, right? They have all the operating utensils laid out, ready for anything that may come during the surgery. Well, this is the same thing. Once we relayer a facile with each of these tools, they're laid out there for us and literally at our fingertips for, again, whatever life throws at us.
And even the most skilled and experienced builder doesn't use all the tools all the time. Exactly. The builder chooses the tool that does the job that's needed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Liana, tell me a little, if you will, about how you use them, how you might use these tools, and in doing that, love to hear about. Maybe you can even tell a story of the use of a tool and something that it's done for you that you can name specifically.
Well, I think in terms of the self-care tool set, I have always been challenged by physical activity because I'm so busy and often at the computer, busy mom, so much else going on. Whereas healthy eating, I think, came more naturally to me. So that was a slam dunk. And again, I'm a different person than others. It might be the other way around. Physical activity is easy for them, but that whole plant-based thing, it just doesn't seems out of reach. And so I found a positive, reinvigorating experience by making sure that I walk outside. So I don't push myself too much. I don't consider myself an athlete, but I've really enjoyed being outside in nature and being able to see the greenery, see beautiful, colorful flowers, smell their aromas. And of course, I live in California, so in general, I'm fortunate because I can do something like that almost year round. What triggered there was the positive emotions and with that experience. And so then any kind of pain factor of, pushing myself a little more, walking a little faster, et cetera, is often forgotten. When I get done with my walk and I look back on it, it's more the memory of the surroundings and how I enjoyed those surroundings. And so I really look forward to my next walk because of that. So it's one way that I've built a self-care tool, marrying it with absolutely with those positive emotions and positive experiences.
I love that description you just gave of creating that positive expectancy for yourself of what this will be like the next time. It invokes that idea, doesn't it, of the extraordinary pleasure of anticipation. Looking forward to doing something again. Liana, thank you. One of the things that drew me instantly in this chapter was the paragraph at the start from Joseph Pilates, and it drew my attention because I've just started doing Pilates myself. took me a lot of years to took me a lot of years to get there and realise the benefits of it. But when you spoke about that that sort of building that pleasurable expectation, it immediately reminded me that although I've only done it a few times myself so far, I started this year, so I haven't been that many times, but I now already have the experience of seeing it in my calendar and starting to develop that sense of, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to this afternoon. I'm looking forward to that tomorrow morning. And I'm as we speak, reflecting on the power of that emotional experience that we can have to then shape and influence what we do, how we do it, what we plan to do next, and so on.
Yeah, that's what the scientists call that upward spiral of behavior change based on positive emotions. And there's some good science behind that. So, but we're speaking to it from personal experience, but it works, and the scientists show that.
Yeah. Liana, thank you. Thank you for sharing some ideas about that first toolkit. Over coming weeks, we're going to explore the other toolkits, of course. I'm particularly interested in the toolkit related to social connectedness and social relationship. And for those of you who've already listened to episode 1, you'll know that Liana spoke very clearly about the strong science that supports that particular element of our well-being. So I'm very keen for that one in particular. But next time we're together, we will dig into another one of the toolkits. Just before we wrap up today, I would love to do just a brief plug for a project of the Global Positive Health Institute. It's called Tiny Health Stories. You can go online and find it. Go to the URL tinyhealthstories.online. And you'll see there we're starting to gather a selection of people's experiences of positive health and positive wellbeing, and you have an opportunity to submit one yourself. We would love you to submit your own story. But here's the catch: Tiny Health Stories. You've got to do it in 100 words or less. So a little challenge there for you. We'd love you to engage with that, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again, Liana.
Thank you, Simon. Till next time, everybody.